Didn't work.
Yeah, there's a black screen. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's here.
Where?
I see it, the death penalty process.
So then if I do.
Yep.
slide from beginning.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's still on the wrong screen.
On your, which screen did you put it on? Your second, which one do you want it on, I guess?
I want it on my main one.
Okay, so did you move it to your main one and then screen share?
Yes.
Well,
So
then
what-
move it to the other one.
I did it both ways.
Do you want me to do it for you?
No, that's all right. Because I mean, that doesn't change anything. I just want to make sure that I could do it.
I try doing it from the other screen one more time now and screen share and see what happens, because you've only screen shared once. Move it to the other screen and then screen share it.
Okay, now my Zoom isn't now it's just like a little small thing.
Oh, you minimized it.
Yeah, I don't know how to.
Yeah, that's what happens. If you hit, Brian, if you hit your escape key on your keyboard, it'll make your PowerPoint smaller. And that way you'll be able to kind of work a little bit easier. Does that make sense?
No, but hold on a sec.
I think he's trying to, James, I think he's trying to move it to his main screen and open it from his main screen. It keeps popping up onto the second screen.
Correct, exactly.
Oh, are you at work, Brian? I'm sorry.
Yes, I am.
Oh.
I just told him to move to do the opposite, and then it'll pop up.
So how do I get my first of all, the Zoom picture is just a small little thing now.
So hover on the bottom of that little picture, and there's a green arrow there to the right. If you hover on the bottom of your little minimized, press on that green arrow.
There is no.
Did you hover your mouse over the bottom little box?
Yes.
That when you hover, you should see a little green arrow inside a box. With it's like pointed towards the diagonally or to the right. Maybe press escape again.
Yeah, the ESC key on your keyboard, Brian. And if you're having a difficult time,
if I push escape, nothing happens.
Oh, really?
Are you sure? Oh, sorry.
Because he's using two screens, probably.
I am using two screens.
Are you really hovering over? Is your Zoom is a little box now in the corner of your desktop, right?
You stopped sharing. Now it's bigger.
Sharing, so I went back to normal.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's not a little box anymore, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Do you want me to see if I share? Will that make a difference, Brian?
No, it's all right. I'll figure it out here. Let me hold on.
Okay. All right, we're gonna.
Well, hold on. Let me try one more time here.
Okay.
Now I have it on both screens.
Oh, you're getting there then. That's good.
You're close.
One more time, one more try, Brian, and you'll get it perfect.
I just don't know how to get. All right, hold on a second. I'm just going to do this a different way here.
Tanya, who else is presenting?
We have child support with Shelley.
Oh, do you know if she's sharing or are you sharing her presentation?
She sent her presentation this morning and I forgot to ask her, but I'll ask her. I'll ask her when she gets on if she wants us to share.
I made you co-host.
Oh, good.
So I can stick around. It's not a big deal.
It's up to you. I mean,
I did have other things to do.
Then go do them. We don't need two of us here.
Two of us. there were two of us, Tanya, we'd solve the world's problems.
That's correct. That is correct.
I'd even be able to solve Brian's problem and try.
I know, right? I should have stayed in the office. I left. I'm like, no, I'm gonna go do it from home, and then.
Okay.
All right. Well, so
Are
I
you
was
right,
trying-
Brian?
yeah, I was trying to just do the presenter's view, but it won't work. It puts it, then it gives me two. So I'll just do the one and we'll go from there since it's already time.
Okay.
We're a few minutes already behind.
Okay. All right. Thank you everybody for joining us today. If you can turn your camera on, we'd love it. We have a great presentation for you talking about the death penalty with Brian LaPrenzi, who is a longtime litigator in our office. He is the one who handled, I know some of you had the questions about the fire case, all the families who were killed in the fires. And that was a death penalty case that just recently happened. It was in the paper. Now's the time to ask those questions. Brian's here to answer. I mean, he's going to go through the whole process too. So you might see that he's going to answer some of your questions, as he goes along. But it truly is an honor to work with Brian, and I'm going to hand the mic over to him.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you again, like Tanya said, for being with us. I really do appreciate you guys participating in this. I know it is long and drawn out at times, but on the other hand, I think it's very informative for us to kind of educate the community on some of the things we do and what we do. And sometimes you see it on TV and you maybe don't really understand some of the reasoning behind it. It's very frustrating to me, somebody that's in this field, to watch TV and see somebody talk about things and really not know what they're talking about. It's very frustrating. So hopefully we can give you on all these topics a little bit of a background so that when you hear things on TV, you kind of know, oh, I know a little bit about that. So obviously this is not some in-depth education today on the death penalty process. It takes years of lawyers to read through all the law and the case law to learn how to do these cases. And so, but we want to give you kind of a background, something that you can at least have a general understanding of the process. Okay. The death penalty is one of those things where everybody has well, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people have a very strong opinion about the death penalty. And so what we want to avoid today is, I didn't want to get into the pros and cons of the death penalty because we'll never solve that here in 45 minutes. And I plan on doing about 30 minutes and then, allowing 15 minutes of time to kind of have questions and follow up. So basically, this is not pros and cons of the death penalty. This is just how the process works. And I guess my whole goal here today is to let you understand or try and explain the process so that it's everybody sees, I guess, that in order to get the death penalty, it is not very easy. It is, and it shouldn't be. It's obviously, final. And so we make it as hard as possible. And as a matter of fact, Ohio is probably one of the, if not the toughest states in the country to get the death penalty, which is probably a good thing, I guess. And then that depends on your views on the death penalty. But so let's get started. So the process, and of course, there we go. I'm going to go over 3 different things. Okay. Just kind of very brief. Number one, the death is different, okay? And that's basically just talking about how we treat it a little bit differently in the judicial system. Number 2, we'll go over the specific laws on how the process actually works in the state of Ohio. And then lastly, we're going to go over how our office decides. And Tanya, have they done grand jury yet? Have they had that yet?
They have. That was one of their first
Okay.
classes. If
So
you,
as
just
you-
FYI, you're not screen shared yet. That you might know that.
Good Lord. Okay, thank you for reminding me.
You're welcome.
Let me know if it comes up.
I think it's going to come up. There you go. We're at the overview.
Oh,
page.
okay,
Thank
so
you,
this is
Brian.
my, so you know you didn't miss anything. That was my first, there's my first screen. This is my second screen. All right, so
Yeah.
death is different. Then we're going to go over the law, how the process in the state of Ohio works. Like I told you, this is one of the toughest in the country. And then how, and this is where I was asking about the grand jury process. You heard about the grand jury process, and to some degree, you understand that there is discretion by the prosecutor's office. And so there's discretion in charging, not only in every case, but death penalty cases too. And so I want to review with you how our office uses our discretion in deciding whether a case should proceed as a death penalty case or not. Okay. So death is different. And you don't have to read all this. I'm going to just kind of summarize it for you. But basically, the Supreme Court years and years and years, 100 years ago, basically said that when we talk about the death penalty, it's irrevocable. And the punishment is so unique that we have to treat it a little bit more, we have to treat it differently and use every safeguard that's possible. And any safeguard that's in place, we must enforce, okay? There's no substantial compliance. So if you kind of mostly follow the rules, then it's okay. We don't have that in the death penalty case. So they delineated out a long time ago that death is definitely different. You can't just treat it like any traffic case. So what does this mean? It means that the courts, and I just kind of went over this, take the safeguards when dealing with the due process. Due process is a kind of a legal term that we hear all the time, but most people don't understand. Due process is the things that you're required to go through in order for the system to be fair. So if you get pulled over by a police officer and he says you were speeding, your due process is to go to court and say, no, I wasn't speeding, and here's why. You have a trial, and there's a whole process. If you have a civil dispute, there's a due process of how that civil dispute is handled, and that's what we call due process. So all extra safeguards are taken in our due process. In order to have a death penalty, the law is different because you have to have additional findings. You can't just find that somebody committed an aggravated murder. You have to have additional findings, which we'll get into later, that qualify that particular type murder for a death sentence. And then lastly, it's different in that in most states, including Ohio, citizens of the community are involved in that and have, so to speak, the last word on the death penalty, okay? Because in Ohio, without the community agreeing that it's a death sentence is appropriate, you cannot get a death sentence. So you have to have community involvement in Ohio. All right. So before the conviction, a lot of times when we have death penalty cases, we hear about all those things that happen afterwards. We hear about how they linger and the appeals and all the people and the famous people that talk about the case. Well, that's always after the conviction. It's before the conviction that people don't really talk about too much. So I want to talk a little bit about those things here today and what safeguards are taken prior to somebody ever being convicted of a death sentence. So as in every case, when a crime occurs, the police get involved and they investigate the case. When they do, they review the case and they will come and they will look at the case for all their reasons that the police do. And they will decide, hey, we think this is a death penalty case, so we're going to charge it with an aggravated murder and the special specifications. Okay. So they are the first people to decide usually whether a case is something that should warrant a death sentence. They then, after that arrest is made, if they decide that the person who did it, decide who did it, they send that case to the prosecutor's office, and then we will review it. After we review it, and we will make our own determination on whether it qualifies legally and then whether we think it's appropriate. After we review it, we send it off to the grand jury, we present it to the grand jury, and now we'll have them decide whether they believe that it is also worthy of potentially of a death sentence. And as you know, each process probably gets a little bit more stringent, right? The police officers aren't lawyers. They're not, but they know about crime. So they make that first initial decision. The prosecutors, we definitely know the law, but we're not the ones who decide this. We're only one side of this. And as you know, it's an adversarial system. So we're going to make a decision, but then we're going to take it to the citizens, and 7 out of 9 of our grand jurors have to decide that there's a likely chance that this case is a death penalty case. And then following that, our office does another prosecutorial review with the aid from defense. And we'll talk about that later. And then lastly, before a death sentence can be imposed at trial, there's all kinds of legal ways to prevent or stop a death penalty, and that could be for constitutional reasons. So the defense attorneys, prior to even the trial, would have an opportunity to suppress evidence. You've heard of motions to suppress, and I don't know if you've had any lectures on that yet, but you have all kinds of legal avenues to stop a death sentence prior to the trial even beginning. So those are all the safeguards that happen before it even gets to a trial. Once the trial happens and there's a conviction and somebody has been sentenced to death by the judge, or by the jury, the trial judge will then have an opportunity to review it at the trial court level, and they can stop the death sentence. If that doesn't happen, it gets appealed to. I'm sorry? Nope. Okay, I thought somebody was asking a question. If that doesn't stop it, then the case can be sent to the Ohio Supreme Court, and they could stop the death sentence. Following the criminal remedies, and as you can see on the, I have it separated out, the trial court would be the criminal, and then the Supreme Court would be criminal too. If that doesn't work, the state of Ohio has a process that you can try civilly to have that stopped. And we call that post-conviction relief. And that involves your due process. So it's not whether you're guilty or not, but did you have a fair process? And so you can do that through civil courts. So you would have a trial court, just like the criminal trial court, review your case, and you could have a trial on that. And if that doesn't work, then you could appeal that to the Court of Appeals in Ohio. If that doesn't work, then you can appeal it to the Supreme Court of Ohio again under the civil process. Once all that is exhausted, if you don't or aren't successful in stopping the death sentence, then, and a lot of times this is where people don't understand that you have an entire state process, both civil and criminal, that you go through before you ever talk about going to the United States Supreme Court or to the federal court system. So once you've exhausted all those things that I went through just now, then a defendant has the right to jump over to the federal system and start the whole process with the United States District Court. And if they're not successful there, they move to the United States Appellate Court and then up to the United States Supreme Court. And a lot of times when we hear about death penalty cases that seem to linger on, and I would tell you that in the state of Ohio, I believe it's about a 15-year appeal process once a sentence is imposed. Part of the reason for that is once somebody exhausts all their appeals and gets into the federal system, you can repeat this process over and over as many times as you have new evidence or new information that wasn't discoverable previously. Okay, so that's why you'll hear a lot of things that'll, come up again. You're like, wait a minute, didn't they just rule on that? And then they say, well, we didn't know about this fact, or we didn't know about that, or here's a new witness that we didn't hear at trial. And so they have the opportunity to have repetitive appeals for that reason. Okay.
Wow.
All right. That's the legal process. And that continues on until finally there's no more issues to be brought before the court. However, during that whole process, the defendant's attorneys, nonprofit organizations like the Innocence Project, family members of the defendant, and citizens. And as we all know, Kim Kardashian has, become very involved in criminal cases and speaking out for people she believes to be innocent of the crimes that they've been convicted of. And so they all will advocate outside of the courtroom. And what they're doing is they're advocating to the governor of the state, okay? And the state governor has very special powers. And the governor, just like the United States, the president of the United States, the governor has the power to pardon people. And so they can try and convince the governor to pardon him completely, the person completely. So if it's an issue of innocence, they can say, okay, I find that this person is not guilty and I'm going to pardon them from anything that they've done, whether they did it or not. They're forgiven. Case gone, okay? It's like it never happened. They can commute the sentence. They can take that sentence and make it into a life sentence, life without parole, so to speak. And they can do a reprieve, which a reprieve is basically any of the above. They can do anything they want, really. Okay, so those are all the things, all the safeguards that are in place in order to prevent a wrongful death sentence from being imposed. And then finally, after all that, there's one last thing, and that's our office. We have, about 3 years ago, we started a conviction review unit, which means that if you've exhausted all your legal appeals, but something has come up that you believe you are actually innocent of, and you want to present it to us, we have a whole process. And I'm not asking you to read this, you can't probably even see it, but this is just our policy. And basically, you as a defendant could come to us and say, hey, I would like you to review my case, and here's why. And we will take another look at it. And then, of course, sometimes, this could be 15 or more years from the conviction. So probably and most likely you have a whole new set of people in the office that are going to take a whole fresh look at this. And so that's a last possible way of defeating a death sentence. So the law, let's talk about the law a little bit. And I should ask, do we have any questions at this point? I know it's very quick and probably stuff you haven't really thought about or heard too much before, but if there's any questions, just please, stop or put them in the chat, and Tanya will see them and send them to me.
Brian,
right,
I do think it's important to stress that the law, you went through the whole process of what the law requires, but there were two things, like programs that, if the law doesn't work, we are providing these options because we want to secure and make sure that there are no mistakes made in this process. And that was one with the defense attorneys allowing them. I think you're going to get into that. And then the second is the conviction review unit. These are things we do not have to do, but we are very, very cautious about this. And we are double, triple, quadruple checking this, right? I think that's I didn't know that, coming into the office. So I thought that was an interesting thing that our office does.
So there's two things that we're legally not required to do. And one is that in the conviction review process. And the other one is going to be the part I'm going to get into here a little bit, where it involves the defense attorneys. And that's a pre-indictment, or not pre-indictment, pre-trial, pre-conviction process.
The one in the beginning, one at the end.
Yes.
Okay.
So the law, and I'll go through this relatively quickly, but basically, in order for it to even qualify legally, at the very basics, as a death potentially sentenced case, you must cause the death of another. It has to be purposeful. It can't be accidental. It has to be purposeful. An intent, what we call an intent to kill. So I mean to kill this person, as opposed to I'm shooting a gun in the air and oops, it happened to come down on somebody, a block away and hit them in the head. You have to have an intent to kill. You also must do it with and you'll see on the screen, in Ohio, we call it prior calculation and design. Most people hear this or know of this as premeditation. So it has to be purposeful and it has to be premeditated, okay? Or if it's not premeditated, you have to do it while you're committing another offense that's specifically enumerated in the state of Ohio. Things like raping, kidnapping, robbery, those types of offenses that, you know, that we really abhor are the type of offenses that you have to be required to be committing when the person dies. But you still have to have the intent to kill. So you can't, if you're robbing somebody and the gun drops on the ground and accidentally goes off, that's not going to qualify. But if you shoot the person on purpose with the intent to kill them during the robbery, that does qualify. Okay. So even if you have that type of an offense, we call that aggravated murder, but even then it's still not enough. You have to have what we call a death specification. And so that death specification is, there's many of them. These are kind of the highlights. I think I have almost all of them up here, but you have to assassinate the president or somebody of the US, your senator or something like that. You have to do it for hire. You can see to escape detention for another offense. So if you're fleeing from a robbery and you shoot a witness or shoot somebody as you're leaving, that can qualify. Killing somebody under the age of 13. So the ones I have highlighted here and bolded are the ones that typically that we use and have used in the past that are the most common. And that is to kill or attempt to kill 2 or more people. Okay. And the other one is that you do it during the commission of another enumerated offense, such as a rape or an aggravated robbery. And those are the 2 that we see most often. Okay. So now we get to the part where, you know, if you qualify legally and the offense, you have the aggravated murder charges and you have a specification, you get through grand jury and all the other processes.
Brian, I'm going to interrupt because there is a question about that. It said, Tracy asked 2 questions, but I'm going to go with the one with the grand jury. She said, did you say that 7 out of 9 on grand jury must designate the conviction of death penalty? And the grand jury has citizens, right? So maybe if you can clarify as you go through this, you know, the difference between the trial and the grand jury, even though we did talk about that, just a little recap.
No, I get it. So in the grand jury, like with every case, it's not a beyond a reasonable doubt determination. It's a probable cause determination. So it's a lot lower standard. And so in a grand jury, you don't have to have a unanimous verdict for any offense. It only has to be 2/3. We have 9 grand jurors, so 6, it's actually be more than 2/3. So 6 is 2/3 is not enough. So you have to have a 7 in order for it to get beyond grand jury and get an indictment. But it would later on, we'll talk about this in the trial process, it would have to be unanimous at the trial process, which we'll talk about here. So when we go to trial, this is basically what you see on TV. You know, the part you won't see is the jury qualification and selection. So the jury qualification, we have a special qualification in death penalty cases. Following that process, we have an evidentiary. That's the part you see on TV, opening statements, and then you follow it with the presentation of your witnesses and all the physical evidence and the experts and things of that nature. And then if there's a conviction, then we take a break for a short period of time, maybe a week or 2. And then we have what we call mitigation. And that is basically the sentencing portion of the death sentence, which we don't normally have. And so that is, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more detail, but basically the mitigation is a second mini trial with the same jury. So the voir dire process, the beginning of this thing. So at that point in time with the death penalty, what we do is and it can be one person at a time or several, but you won't do the entire panel at the same time, because we'll bring in 250 to 300 people to possibly sit on this death penalty case. So what we will do is we will talk to them either individually or in very small groups and talk to them about their beliefs about the death penalty, about racial issues, if those are involved, knowledge about the case, media attention, any potential conflicts, if they know some of the witnesses or the victims or the defendant. And we ferret that all out at the very beginning on this. And that takes probably 2 to 3 weeks to do. After we do that, and during that process, we also have to make sure what we call death quality, that the juror is death qualified. They have to be willing to impose a death sentence in the state of Ohio. Now, you also have to understand that it's a two-way street. So not only do you have to be willing to impose it, but you have to be willing to not impose it in every case. So it's a very fine line, and defense asks questions in regards to, are you going to always impose a death penalty if they're convicted? And the state usually asks, well, you're not going to just get on this jury and then just say no to the death penalty no matter what, no matter how bad it is. And so we kind of try and end up with a middle ground with jurors that are basically, I am for the death penalty in some cases and not for it in other cases. It depends on the circumstances, and I'm willing to listen to what everybody has to say and make a fair decision. And that's basically what we're looking for. And that's usually what you end up with. Following that, we have a general voir dire where we take all the people that are qualified and we get background information and things like that. And that's pretty standard. Then we do the jury presentation. Basically, we would present our case, the state would. The defense has an opportunity to contest that through cross-examination of our witnesses. They can contest it, try and impeach them, which is trying to show that they're not credible. And then they can put on, after we're done, they can put on their case. They can put on evidence if they want. And then we, after their case, have a second chance to rebut or to explain or their defense, okay? And then following that, closing arguments, and then deliberations, okay? Your standard kind of jury trial that you would see on all these TV shows. All right, so the deliberations. In a death penalty case, all 12 jurors must deliberate on each and every charge, okay? So if you have an aggravated murder and an aggravated robbery or a kidnapping or a rape, they have to decide on each case, on each charge. All 12 must agree for there to be a conviction. Likewise, in the state of Ohio, all 12 must disagree or find the defendant or believe the defendant is not guilty in order for there to be a not guilty. If they can't agree unanimously, then it's a hung jury and there's a mistrial, and we start over again and we pick a new jury, and when they try and do it. That's not very common. You'd be surprised at how infrequently that happens. And the standard, as you probably have all heard before, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. So now, unlike the grand jury, it's not preponderance of the evidence, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. All right, so if the verdict in the case is not guilty, we all know what happens. You go home, right? Jury is determined that the state has failed to meet its burden of proving that you committed this crime. So you go home. Excuse me. If the jury finds the defendant unanimously guilty, then, and with the specification in a death penalty case, if they find unanimously to both, then I take that back. I skipped it. If they find him guilty unanimously of the charges, but not the specification for death, it doesn't go to it, then they're done. No death sentence. And the judge will sentence them to some type of life sentence, okay? If they're guilty beyond a reasonable doubt unanimously to both the charges and the specification for death, then it goes to our mitigation that we talked about just briefly earlier. Okay, so during mitigation, it's the same. It's like a little trial. The state has opportunity to go forward. Then this defense goes, and then we can rebut it. And it's the same jurors. And basically at that point in time, the law, and if you were in a death penalty case, you would hear it over and over again. The state has a burden of proving that the aggravating circumstances outweigh the mitigating factors. So the aggravating circumstances are those things in the specification. okay, that they're under 13, that he tried to kill 2 or more people. Those are the aggravating circumstances. The mitigating factors are those things that the defense is bringing forward that don't have to do with guilt or innocence. They have to do with the defendant himself. How was he brought up? What opportunities did he have in life? What health issues might he have, or mental capacity issues does he have? Now, obviously, we've heard a lot in recently and publicly about people with mental health issues and things of that nature. There's a certain level that you cannot be subject to a death sentence if you are intellectually disabled. So that's not an option. These are people who are not intellectually disabled, but may have some other factors that might prove to be somewhat mitigating. They lessen the appropriateness of a death sentence. And those are the things, and as you can see, they use terms like factors that lessen the moral culpability or diminish the appropriateness of the death sentence. So it's kind of one of those things where everybody on that jury has the opportunity to listen to what the defense has to present and basically say, you know, I agree, this person has done a really horrible thing, but based on what I'm hearing about that person's background, their upbringing, they really had no chance in life, that kind of thing. Then they might say, I don't think he's deserving of death. And so that's what the defense is going to present. So the state has to prove the aggravating circumstances outweigh the mitigating factors that the defense presents beyond a reasonable doubt. If the state is successful in doing that, we prove those aggravating circumstances outweigh the mitigating factors, the jury must find for death. Okay? If any one juror decides that the state didn't meet that burden, it's over. No death sentence, ever. And so that is the thing about Ohio, is that any one juror can stop a death sentence at any time during deliberations. If the jury is not unanimous on death, that the aggravating circumstances outweigh the mitigating factors, then they have to decide whether on a life sentence, and they decide on life without parole, life with parole eligibility after 30 years, or 25 years. And they'll have to decide that, okay? So it's not like if they don't do death, the guy goes home, he could still go to prison for the rest of his life and never have an opportunity to get out, other than if the governor pardons him or commutes his sentence. At that point, if the jury decides unanimously that there's a death sentence, and that it's appropriate, it's still not a death sentence. At that point, the trial court would have to do the same process. Based on the information they received during that mitigation trial, the judge then has to do its own evaluation of aggravating versus mitigating, and they would then present or write up a decision or journal, opinion rather, and enumerate all the factors for each side. I find these to be aggravating circumstances. I found these to be mitigating factors, but I find that the aggravating outweighs the mitigating, or it doesn't. And then if they decide and agree with the jury that the aggravating outweighs the mitigating, then it's a death sentence. That continues on. If the judge disagrees with the jury, so the jury found unanimously for the death sentence, but the judge said, no, I don't think that the aggravating outweighed those mitigating, death is off the table, not a possibility anymore, even in the future. So that's, then after that happens, if the judge decides that, yes, the jury was correct, then we start the whole appeal process that we talked about before. It goes up to the Ohio Supreme Court, criminal, and then it keeps going from there. Okay. All right. So I talked about at the very beginning, and I know, oh gosh, 37 minutes. All right. So, so our process, this is the process that we're not required to do, but we do at the very beginning. This is the pre-indictment, pre-trial stuff. So we started this several years ago. So I have new process. It's not as new now as it was when I first wrote this 2 years ago. But the purpose of this new process is to avoid unnecessary capital litigation, basically to save us time and money. Okay. And the reason for that is because sometimes we don't know things about the defendant. We don't have the right to just go in and research this defendant's school records or medical records. We don't have that ability. We have to have like a search warrant and have some kind of a constitutional basis to go search his records because they're very private and personal. So sometimes we go through this whole entire process to get the mitigation. The defense is not required to give us any of this information until right before the mitigation. Now, all of a sudden they tell us, hey, our client was raped repeatedly by the victim in this case as a child. And so they decided to plan their death, and they did that. Well, we're like, well, heck, if you had told us that in the beginning, we would have never gone through this process. So now we've decided, hey, listen, instead of doing that, if you have something of significance that you want us to know before we indict him with a death specification, here's your opportunity. Convince us not to do it. And so basically what we do is when we do that process where the police department brings the case to us and says, we think this is a death penalty case. And then we have one of our violent crime unit supervisor review it individually. And they go, yeah, I think it is. I think it could be. Then our entire violent crime unit supervisors will all review it. If we then all kind of agree, okay, then we invite the defense counsel to come in and do that. Hey, the floor is yours. You tell us whatever you want us to know. And then after that process, we talk to the victim's family. And if the victim's family doesn't want us to pursue a death sentence, typically we won't do it. But that's, it's not an absolute. So it depends on the facts of the case. But we definitely take their input very seriously. And then ultimately, if after the defense has an opportunity to present whatever they want, the victim's family feels its death sentence is appropriate, then we will take it to Sherry Bevan Walsh. And then ultimately she will make the decision, yes, you may go forward with pursuing a death sentence in this case. So if any one of those things falters, then it doesn't get past us even. So it never even gets to the grand jury. So that's kind of our process for that. And
Tracy had asked, with all these 15-year iterations possible, how does anyone ever get executed?
Well, not often. People don't get executed very often. I'm trying to think, that's why, in the state of Ohio, how many murders happen each year, and maybe you'll hear of, maybe 4 executions in a year, maybe. It's just very, very difficult to get a death sentence to be, carried out. It is very difficult, and particularly in Ohio. And one of the things in Ohio that makes it even more difficult is that we're not allowed to talk about the heinousness of the crime. We can't talk about what the victim suffered. You can't talk about how horrible of a death they experienced. It's all about the defendant and what the defendant did, not about the victim or what the victim experienced. And that makes it very difficult at times because you forget about the victim and you only think about the defendant and what things that he has gone through in life and not what the victim suffered. And so hopefully that answered the question.
Sorry, there's one more question where it's how often is someone tried on a death penalty case and found not guilty and walk free?
Almost never.
Kristen asked the question.
Yeah, and the reason for that is, and I'll kind of touch on that here in a second. That's okay. As you see here, this is the offer we make to the defense attorney, and this is basically what I said about them having the opportunity to come and give us whatever information they want. So these are the things we look for when we're pursuing a potential death sentence. So the strength of the case, which goes to that point you were just making. In a death penalty case, if we're not extremely confident about the strength of our case, then we're not going to pursue a death sentence because we want to make sure there's no chance that an innocent person is put to death. And so that's why usually it's a very, 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 very strong case against a defendant in a death sentence case, death penalty case, which is why they rarely get found not guilty. That doesn't mean that they get found guilty of, or sentenced to death, but they are very rarely not found guilty. So we look at the heinousness of the crime. We look at the vulnerability of the victim. Somebody that's, out jogging one night and somebody jumps out of the bushes and, attacks them, rapes them, and then kills them. That's completely innocent person, vulnerable, that kind of thing. We look at the vulnerability of maybe somebody with a disability, that can't fend for themselves. That's why, under 13 is one of those things. The relationship, senselessness of the killings, they're all senseless, but, there's always that degree, right, of everything. The culpability of the defendant is one of those things. Culpability is like blameworthiness. How blameworthy is the defendant? So sometimes if you have a case where there's 3 or 4 different defendants, what role did that defendant play in the death? So if you have 3 people that go in and rob a bank, they all have guns, but only one is the one who kills the person, but all 3 shot at them. The question is, okay, is only the person who killed them actually the one that should get death, or should they all get death because they all acted the same? Those are the things we consider. So basically,
And the victim, right?
What's that?
And the victim, what the victim wants that you consider.
Well,
That goes without saying.
Yeah, that's on there too. The victim's family, that's the other part of it too. So the results, and this is my last slide wrapping up here. So to date, since we've started this new process, we've had 5 cases that we reviewed, and it might have gone up to 6 now. I have to review that, but 5 cases to date, 2 of them resulting in pursuing a death specification. The other 3, we felt after listening to the mitigation that it was probably not a good idea, or it was probably not appropriate to pursue a death sentence in those cases. And I'll tell you, like one of them happened to be that we learned that the individual had been sexually assaulted for many, many years. And so that was one of the factors we used. And we've had a favorable response from the defense bar. They've all participated every time we've given them the opportunity. Now, they don't always tell us everything. They don't always bring all of it. Sometimes they hold stuff back, but the fact is that they each one of them has been requested to come in and give mitigation, has done that. And they have indicated that they like this new process. So that's a good thing too, that the defense believes it's a fair part of the process. So with that, 6:45, I ended exactly. I know it was rushed. I hope you guys understood. If not, I'm always available for phone calls, questions, of things of that nature. We kind of have an open door policy here. So please feel free to ask me any questions you want. But we still probably have a couple minutes for additional questions if anybody wants to, something they want to ask. I know there were some questions about Stanley Ford.
Yep, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, whoever
Yeah.
was asking those questions, feel free to ask. I'll try and answer them relatively quickly.
There was one on the chat from Tracy that said, I think it's more of a follow-up to the other questions that she asked, is, so death is not really a viable outcome since it isn't implemented. Wasn't that the point of severe consequence?
Yes. Death is still a viable option, but it is becoming more and more rare. There's no question about that. There's many, many factors about whether death is viable as a deterrent. There's lots of statistics about that. There's also factors about cost. So there's a lot of different things that go into whether somebody ends up being put to death. And I'm not really sure how to answer that to some degree, because I know that there have been people from Summit County that have been put to death, but it is very difficult to do, and it should be. I mean, I don't think anybody would agree that we should make it easy to have somebody put to death. And so that's why it's become very difficult to do. And we try and do our part in making sure that if somebody is put to death, that it is the right decision. If we make that decision that they are deserving of death and that they are absolutely guilty of this crime, we're going to pursue it adamantly and just persistently. But otherwise, it is very difficult.
Tracy also wanted to follow up with the Ford case where she said, what happened with him? Was he charged with death specifications?
So Stanley Ford was charged with death specifications. He was charged with 22 counts of murder. There was 9 people that were murdered, but there were varying. You can have multiple charges for the same thing. So we could have charged for the aggravated murder by commission of an arson. So while committing an aggravated arson, you committed a murder. So that's one of the specifications. Also, one of the specifications, and also for an aggravated murder, is if you're under the age of 13. So those are 2 charges of murder for the same death. So that's why there's 22 counts. Each one of them had several specifications to them. So we went through the entire process, and ultimately the jury convicted him of almost all the charges, all the murders he was convicted of. We went to mitigation. Presented the evidence, and after mitigation, the jury deliberated, and it was 11-1 for death. One individual decided that he had some brain damage, and they felt that because of that brain damage, that he didn't deserve to die for killing the 9 victims. And so that put an end to it. And that's, just the very thing we talked about in Ohio. It's very difficult to do. And that is why, but that's the community speaking. And so that was the outcome of that case. So he was sentenced to 9 consecutive life without parole sentences.
And I know we have our next speaker on the line, but just for everyone's perspective, how long did were you in trial for the Ford case? And then how long after that, how you took the week off for them to go back for the mitigating factors, how long did that take? Because I don't think people realize how exhausting it is, right?
The trial, we started picking the jury on August, I think it was like 12th. We started picking the jury. I think the verdict came back end of September. So it was about a 6-week process of trial, jury selection, things of that nature. And then we took about a week. I take that back. What did I say? Yeah, end of September. So then we took about a week off, did the mitigation, which lasted 2-3 days. And then the deliberations were shortly about a day after that, it was about a day. And so that ended. The whole process probably took about 7 to 8 weeks at the end of the day. Any other questions? I know Shelley is eager. I can see she's eager to get going on her portion of the presentation.
There's one more question.
Sure.
From Darlene. It said, I work with disabled youth. What test or how do you determine if an adult meets sorry, my screen is small. If the adult meets the intellectual disability level to not be charged with the death penalty? Well,
so that is a whole nother topic that could take hours. The intellectual disability is a very, very complicated area. It is a combination of functionality and intellect. So most people think, oh, look, if you have an IQ of this level, then you're intellectually disabled. And for those of you that, I hate to use the term, but we used to call it retardation. And so they have changed that now. It's called intellectual disability. And so if you fall below a certain level of intellectual intelligence, you're determined to be, it's like a diagnosis of intellectual disability. And it's not just that. it's a combination of things. And so basically what ultimately ends up happening is if the prosecution doesn't agree that they're intellectually disabled, and sometimes we do, sometimes we say, no, there's no way. But sometimes we think people fake it. Believe it or not, people do pretend to be not very smart in order to avoid, prosecution for not only this, but many things. And so if we disagree, then basically we have an evaluation done of the defendant. The defense has evaluations, and then we argue it before the judge, and the judge makes a decision on that issue. And that's kind of how we do that. But it's a very, very complicated legal quagmire of determining intellectual disability.
Okay, great.
All right, Shelley,
Thank you.
thank you for letting me encroach on your 45 minutes. I appreciate it. And thank you all. And again, please feel free to call if you have any questions. Maybe it's kind of a dry topic for you, but if there's anything you guys would like to talk about, even outside of this, I'm more than happy to chat with anybody that has questions about the criminal justice system or anything that we do here. With that, thank you for your attentiveness, and have a good Thanksgiving holiday, everybody.
There were some thank yous in the chat for you, Brian, too. So
Oh,
thank you
very good.
much for your time.
Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome. It's
We
my
appreciate
pleasure.
it. So while the death penalty is like the most interesting, movie worthy type of thing, I will tell you, in reality, what we get most questioned about is child support. The Child Support Enforcement Office is the most interesting in terms of reality, what people really have questions about, how it affects them, and so forth. And not every prosecutor's office has a child support enforcement office as a part of their office. We do, and Shelley Woodruff is here to tell you about that most commonly asked division in our office. Shelley, thanks for being here. We appreciate your time, and take it away.
Oh, hello, everybody. Good evening. I am Shelley Woodruff, and I'm the Community Relations Specialist for the Summit County Prosecutor's Office in the Child Support Division. A little bit about my background. I've been with the office 22 years in August, this past August, and I've kind of worked in different departments. I've been in the enforcement department. I've been in the fraternity unit. I've worked as a caseworker. I have worked as a receptionist. I've worked as a file room clerk, you name it. I've kind of done it. So I've seen a lot. I've been there, like I said, for 22 years. And so I know a lot about it. Things are constantly changing though. So feel free if you have any questions or, anything as we are going along with the presentation, to send it in the chat box. I will do my best to answer the question. If for some reason I don't know the answer, I definitely will get it and get the response back to you as quickly as possible. The only department I've never worked in has been our legal division. I've worked very closely with the legal division. So, I do know some of those answers, but a lot of things have changed. ORC codes have changed and different things are being enforced now. So if, like I said, if you have some of those questions and I cannot answer them, I will get the answer for you. Okay. So we're going to talk about child support, and child support is one of the most popular, departments that we have at our agency. In 22 years, I've heard good, I've heard bad. I deal a lot of times with the incarcerated parents. So I deal a lot with so once someone is convicted and charged and convicted with a criminal non-support, they could be ordered into a program through like Oriana, or they could even be sentenced to prison. And so I go into the prisons, Oriana houses, and I talk about child support. And I talk about what we can do to help them try to get back on track and pay their child support. I also work a lot with the new moms and dads. So when mom first gives birth at the hospital before COVID, I would go into the hospital and I would actually do the DNA test on mom, baby, and child to determine if dad is dad legally by doing the mouth swab. So I kind of work with both sides of the spectrum. I work with the side that, before there's an actual order and establishing fraternity. So sometimes I'm one of the first people they come in contact with in our office. And then I also work on the enforcement side once somebody has been sentenced to prison time. So I'm kind of both on both sides. But the most important thing that I always try to tell everybody about child support, communication is key in all of my cases, whether it's at the start of the case or whether it's towards the end of the case or whether it's in the middle of the case, communication is the key. Because the child support agency, we are here, we're an enforcement agency, we're here to collect on the court orders. And so I think that there's a lot of misconception in terms of how child support gets started, how, I get a call often that'll say, well, how did I even get a case at child support? And so I like to kind of explain how the majority of our cases get started. And then we'll go into my presentation. I do have a PowerPoint to try to touch on like each important subject. But mostly our cases are created off of an interface report. So whenever whoever child lives with, whether that be with mom, grandma, dad, whoever has legal custody of the child, if they go in and apply for assistance, whether it's cash or medical assistance, then the self-sufficiency contract is signed and they have to cooperate with all government agencies. So the first thing we have to do is create a case so that we can see if paternity is established. And then once we see whether paternity is established, then if it is established, then we will move forward with trying to see if there is a support order that needs to be set. Or if the paternity has not been established, we'll move forward with establishing paternity. But the majority of our cases come over through interface, meaning somebody signed up to receive some type of assistance. And then once that happens, all the parties are, supposed to cooperate with establishing paternity. And then, maybe not necessarily to set a support order, but just to have paternity established and to address if there's medical coverage available for that child outside of the state medical. So that's how a lot of our cases get started. So I just kind of wanted to clear that up. Like a lot of people are like, well, I just got on, somebody just put me on child support. I don't know how I ended up on child support. I'm like, well, that didn't quite happen like that. So I try to make sure that everyone understands. And then the other way, of course, is either parent, mother or father, or a legal grandmother that has custody. Anyone that wants our services can apply for an application for service. They can complete an application for services and they can circle on the application what services they need from us, and that will create a case. So just so that everyone knows how we get our cases started. Okay. So we can
I ask a question before we move on from that?
Sure.
And I guess it's a little bit transparent because I was a young mother before and I never went through that. But someone said that to me, what you said about like applying for benefits, but I've gotten assistance before and I don't have like a child support order. I mean, not that I've pursued anything, but no one ever contacted me and said, hey, we want to start anything either. It's like my children have paternity, like they have their dad's name on their like documents. There's no question of paternity. I think there's actually been a paternity test. I don't know. We're not married. But I've never gone through that. And I hear what you said a lot, like as far as like if you ever get assistance, they're gonna wanna they put that on child support. But I mean, my children are older now. They're like 11 and 18, but I never experienced that when I was young and like getting assistance and things like that. Is that always the case?
Yeah, most often, unless the parties live together. If cash assistance involved, assistance,
no.
yeah. So it has to be cash assistance,
Okay.
and most recently, within the last 3 years, medical assistance. So if you were receiving like, WIC or Title 20 child care, any of those benefits would, or even, housing, none of those benefits would create a case at child support. Only the cash assistance and medical assistance.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Thanks for asking that question because yes, so medical assistance, meaning that somebody's receiving a monthly grant for themselves as well as the child that's inside the household, that will kick a case over through interface, as well as if someone is signed up to receive medical benefits. And we just recently started doing the medical support orders because the state wants us to see if other medical coverage is available for the child at a reasonable cost. So just the cash and the medical assistance, that's the way that we will receive our cases over at CSEA. Okay. All right. So let's go on with the PowerPoint, because the PowerPoint kind of addresses different departments and how everything goes. So we'll kind of go along with the PowerPoint. And again, if anyone has a question, just kind of let me or Tanya know, and we can get your question as we're moving along, if that's okay.
Do you want me to share it, Shelley?
Yes, if you could, that would be great.
Not a problem. Just while I'm getting that going, I'll tell you there was a question from Kathy. It said, but if a person isn't on assistance, they don't have to pay child custody. Oh, you answered it. Sorry, Kathy, I see it. It says that helps. Looks like you answered the question.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I have the chat on a minimal screen, so I'm only reading like.
I know
one
mine
word.
probably a little, and mine is
And then I'm like,
small. I
oh.
don't have my glasses, so.
Okay. All right. Okay, everybody. Do you guys see that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, wait, hold on. It's sharing. Okay, now we're going to slideshow from the beginning. There we go.
Okay, there we go.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so let me exit my, okay, let me open my screen all the way up. I'm sorry. Okay, there we go. Okay, so so am I able to move this time, or do you need to move it?
I'm gonna have to move it for you.
Okay, so can we go up to the first because that's not, oh, there we go. There we go. Okay. So just so that you all have my information, right on the front slide, the first slide there has my name and my title. And then on the last slide, it will have my email address as well as my number to the office, so that if you need to contact me or you want to send me any other questions or concerns or anything like that, my information will be listed on the last slide. Okay, I'm ready.
And I could also send that out to you if you guys have any questions from any of our speakers.
Okay. So Summit County, so the Summit County CSEA, we thought that it was important for you all to know like how many children, how many cases, just information that is monitored on a monthly basis with our office. So currently we are servicing 54,325 children in Summit County. So those are just Summit County cases alone. 74% of our support owed is collected in the month that it is due. Like a lot of people think, you know, oh, people aren't paying child support. 74% of the child support that is owed is actually paid in the month that it's due. So on the first of every month, a case will charge. So on the first of every month, if a person is ordered to pay $200 a month, the first of that month, it will charge, and it needs that $200 a month would need to be paid by the last day of the month, because again, on the first day of the month, the next month is going to charge again. So 74% of child support owed is collected in the month that it is actually due. In the federal fiscal year 2018, parents paid over $48 million on time. So, you know, we thought that those were important facts. And then in the federal fiscal year of 2018, parents paid over $20.6 million towards past due child support obligation. So what that means is anytime someone doesn't pay within their time frame from the first day of the month until the last day of the month, then if there is a balance, it will roll over and it becomes arrears. So $20.6 million was paid towards the past due support, meaning they didn't pay it in the month that they owed it. That case accumulated arrears. And so then we ended up collecting it, and it went towards the arrears balance that was owed. Okay. So Summit County CSEA, what are the benefits of the Summit County Child Support Enforcement Agency? So the benefits of the Child Support Enforcement Agency, of course, is, that with the child support, we are obligated to establish paternity of parents that are not married. And we are responsible for establishing and enforcing a child support order. So it's really important that people, understand the reason why we have child support. Like, it's not for the benefit of the workers. People have actually told me, well, child support is in place so that you could get paid. And I'm like, well, no, that's not the reason why child support is important. Child support is important because it puts the responsibility on both parents to be obligated to support that child. Who is eligible to apply for child support services? So anyone that is a parent or a grandparent that has legal custody, they are allowed to apply and is eligible for child support. Okay. So a dad that thinks he's dad and is not sure whether he's dad, he can request our services, and we will legally establish paternity by DNA testing, and that's free of charge. How much does it cost to receive services? I just answered that question. It's a totally free service. So if you come to child support, you apply for child support services, those services are free. There's no cost for those services. For us to establish paternity, establish a support order, enforce the order, collect the payments, and send them out. There's no fee. There's a 2% processing fee that is added to the monthly obligation when a court order is set, and that 2% processing fee is added to the monthly obligation, and that is paid with the child support order. So that's the only fee, but that's not for starting the case. We will do the paternity establishment and establishing the order at no cost. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Can you get the next slide, Tanya? You know what? I don't know. Okay. So the services provided when parents are living apart. So we establish paternity, which means a legal parent-child relationship is established. So that means that whenever parents are not married, we need to establish paternity, and we can do that one of two ways. We can the parents can sign an affidavit, paternity acknowledgement, acknowledging that they are the legal mother and father of that child. That paperwork is notarized, and then that paperwork is sent to Central Paternity Registry, and that is the form that will generate a birth certificate. Another way we will establish paternity is by DNA testing. If the parents do not want to sign the acknowledgement, the voluntary acknowledgement, they can submit to DNA testing, and all three, mom, dad, and child, will be swabbed, and we will get paternity test results. If dad is proven to be dad, we issue an administrative order stating that he is proven to be dad by DNA testing. We'll send a copy of that administrative order to Central Paternity Registry. That will generate a birth certificate, and that is another way that we establish paternity. Next, establish financial and medical support orders. So the Child Support Agency, we are responsible for establishing the support order. We look at both parties' income, and then they take into consideration, childcare. They take into consideration who carries medical. These are all things that you get credit for during the time that they're addressing a support order, but both parents is taken into consideration. Their other children that they may have and are responsible for is also taken into consideration when they set a support order. Medical is the same thing. If parties are not wanting a financial dollar amounts child support order, but they're receiving medical for the state would have us have both parties supply their income information as well as any medical that is provided for the child. And then we would use the formula to determine whether it's reasonable for, dad or mom to add the child to their medical benefits. If it's unreasonable, then they just continue to receive the benefits through the state of Ohio. And, you know, in some cases, we have parents that both parties, neither of them have jobs that offer medical coverage, or it's not reasonable, so they just receive medical through the state. And so we're in compliance once we have those parties present that information to determine whether that support, that medical support is, you know, if it's affordable. If it's not, then they just continue to receive their state medical. We will collect the family support obligation. So we will withhold the child support, whether that's coming from an employer, a bank account, taxes. If someone is working, we will send a withholding to the employer, and the employer will withhold and send those payments into the child support office, or they upload it electronically. Everything's electronic now, but we still do receive paper checks at our office, and then we will disperse that to the families. And oh, I don't know what's happening. It's just flipping through.
Sorry, that's my fault.
It's okay. I'm
I
like, wait a minute.
accidentally-
I know I
my
didn't touch it.
No, I'm like, oh no.
I'm like, what is going on here?
I was trying to find the chat box because I can't get it when I'm sharing screen. So I just want you all to know, if you have a question, speak up. I tried to click and I ended up clicking the slide, so I apologize. If you have questions, feel free to speak up. I know Shelley doesn't mind. Just unmute
No,
yourself.
I do not. Absolutely not. So we're down to collect. So we collect the family's child support. Modify. We will review and modify the judicial and administrative child support order. So to modify or request a modification. So after we have established paternity and set a support order based off both parties' income, we will then, or we can modify the order. A person can request, either party can request a modification every 3 years or 30% change in income. So every 3 years, mom or dad or whoever, you know, is receiving the support or paying the support, our obligees or obligors, they can request for that order to be modified, or at least review to see if it can be modified. And we can modify judicial and administrative child support orders. We can also locate parents and their assets. So once we have established paternity and established a support order and try to collect from wage withholding, then if we cannot, then we can locate a parent and locate their assets. We work with several different departments that will, you know, see if someone has property that they own, check for bank accounts. All of that information is reported to our agency whenever we have a social security number and name in our system. It's constantly looking. So if we have an employment screen and it says invalid, our system is constantly searching for a good employer for that person. And of course, we have the ability to be able to enforce the child support orders. When we say enforce the child support orders, we try to withhold from an employer. If we're unable to withhold from the employer, then we try to find out if their bank accounts are available. They will be reported to the tax offset if we're not receiving payments for us to intercept their taxes. You know, we will suspend driver's license, which we'll talk about that a little bit further down, but we will suspend driver's license for non-payment of child support. We can take lottery winnings. I mean, there's several different ways that we will enforce child support. We can even charge someone for contempt as well as a criminal non-support, and they can face jail time for non-payment of child support. So those are some of the services that we can provide at our office. Okay, can we go to the next one? Okay, so next, what if one of the parents live in another state or country? Each state and territory of the USA uses the same law to process intergovernmental cases. The CSEA can provide assistance with establishing, modifying, enforcing support orders, even when one parent lives in a different state or country. So in the event that we have a mom and a child that lives in the state of Ohio. And say mom is currently receiving cash assistance from the state of Ohio in Summit County, then we will send mom a questionnaire, and mom will complete that questionnaire. And on that questionnaire, one of the questions that is listed there will ask where the child was conceived, because that's very important. If the child was conceived in Ohio and born in Ohio, then Ohio, we're going to be the state that's going to pursue the other state. So we're going to be the initiating state. And that is because we would have jurisdiction over that child because the mom was born in the state of Ohio. But if if the child was conceived here, then we can set that support order because he's been here in the state of Ohio. If child was conceived in another state and mom moved to the state of Ohio, we would then, and dad has never been in the state of Ohio, we would have to get the state involved where dad lives, because we will need them to help us establish paternity as well as try to enforce the support order. So we do have an interstate unit that actually works in the interstate unit actually has 5 workers, and they all work with different states in establishing paternity and enforcing support orders. And so all the states kind of work together. Our systems all hook up and they talk to one another. So that's how we are able to locate people that are out of state, or, locate employers for people that live in a different state. So the interstate unit is, it does exist, and they work their cases from the beginning to end. So when they receive a case, they work it from the establishment side all the way until there's an order and they're enforcing that order. So we do have an interstate unit. The next slide, please. So the next slide, options to establish paternity, which we talked about a little bit, benefits of establishing paternity. The benefit of establishing paternity is so that a child will know who their biological parent is, as well as it's important to have paternity established because it's important to have a birth certificate that has mom's name and dad's name listed on it, as well as if something were to happen to mom or to dad, that child may be eligible for a Social Security derivative benefit. Without paternity being established, that child is not entitled to that benefit. So it's important to have paternity established. How much does it cost to establish paternity? In the state of Ohio, it's totally free for us to establish paternity. That's the DNA test. That's even, we will establish paternity, we will have an administrative order issued, and then we will file that for the parties with Central Paternity Registry to produce a birth certificate with both parents' name on it. And that's no cost to either parent. Do I need an appointment, and where else can parents access testing? So pre-COVID, I could go into the hospital. I would be contacted from the hospital and they would say, we have a family here. They are requesting DNA testing. And I would go into the hospital. I had a badge. I just swipe myself in, and I would go to the patient's room, meet with the parents, and then go over the process of establishing paternity with them. And then at that time, if they would like to do the DNA test, I would get an application completed, and then we would get them swabbed right on site. And within 2 to 3 weeks, we would have paternity test results for them. And we would do the entire test right there in the hospital before they're discharged. But of course, because of COVID, we still have the outreach program with the hospital, but now they have to contact me by email or by phone, and I will send them the application, and they will complete the application and then send it back to me by email. And then I will get them scheduled for our paternity testing through the drive-up process. So currently, we are now offering the drive-up DNA testing. We just can't allow it to be on a walk-in basis or just a drive-up basis. You have to have an appointment. So the parties have to contact me either from the hospital or once they're discharged, and then we will get them added to the schedule so that they could drive up. They just drive up. We provide them information as to where they go in our parking garage. They never even have to leave their car other than just to take a picture, and then we swab them and they're on their way. So we are still offering the DNA testing. We're just doing it through a drive-up process. And then
correct me if I'm wrong, but did we not win any awards for that, for being like innovative with?
Yes,
creating a
we've won
drive-up?
several. Yes, we actually have. We actually did a video on it as well. And I think if you went like back to our Facebook page, there's a video of John and I actually demonstrating the entire process. But we've won all kind of awards because people were like, "What made you guys think of this?" And we were like, "Well, we were like, we still need to offer the service of establishing fraternity, but how can we do it safely so that our clients are protected as well as our phlebotomists is protected? What can we do?" And so someone came up with that great idea. I actually want to say that it was Jennifer Toltz, our director. She was like, "Well, you can drive up to pick up your food, and you can drive up to go to the bank, and you could drive up to do these things. Why can't we drive up to do DNA testing?" Because we tried to think of everything and we just couldn't come up with anything. And then when she suggested that, we were like, "Oh, this might work." So if you go back to our Facebook page, I believe we did that back in May or June. You can actually watch that video of how the entire process go from start to finish. So it's pretty popular. We have other counties that have jumped on board, and now they are copying our process.
I think it's great too that you have an instruction video. So, because a lot of times people don't know what to expect, like what do I have to do? What is it? And so you kind of gave them a little heads up for the whole process. It
Right.
was really great.
So it's pretty neat. So,
Do you want me to go to the next slide?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay. So this slide is collecting financial support. So the best option for collecting financial support is income withholding order. So what that means is whenever we set a support order for someone to pay child support, if we have an employer listed for them, then we will send out an income withholding order. And it's an order that goes to the employer, their HR or payroll department, and it just notifies them that this person is currently ordered to pay child support. It lists the amount that they're ordered to pay. It will list the parties' names, the child's name, and our address as to where the payments need or how the payments need to be made. And it gives them a full breakdown of how much each payment should be, if a person is paid weekly, if they're paid bi-weekly. So the employer will receive all that information in their payroll department. We always tell everyone when there's a new case, expect for it to take about 3 to 4 weeks for that withholding to start, just depending on how, that employer payroll department, how they process payments. Some of them do it electronically. And so we actually have the payment before the party is paid. Some of them, they actually still mail in the payments. So we always tell everyone once we send the withholding out to allow at least 3 to 4 weeks for those payments to start coming in. But administrative remedies that we use, lump sum orders. So a lump sum order is in the event that we're notified by an employer that someone's going to get a bonus or they're going to receive a lump sum, then they will send us that order and we will have to verify that account to see if there's any arrears owed on that case. If there's arrears owed, then we can intercept that lump sum. And instead of them providing that to the employee, that would then come to child support and be posted to their child support account. We do something called the default action. Default action is where a person, if they are in arrears and they are behind at least 1 month monthly obligation, then we can default them. They'll be notified by mail that we're going to default them. And with the default process, there's an additional 20% added to their monthly obligation to collect on their payment of arrears. So, they can even appeal that before the process starts, or they can pay it so that it's paid in full and there's no default. So people are notified by mail that that's going to happen. Federal and state tax offset, that's just where we can intercept their federal and state taxes. It's connected to their social security number. We file liens. We file, liens through the courts, and we can have a lien placed on someone so that they can't buy or sell any property. We've been contacted a number of times when people want to purchase properties or sell properties, and their title company will contact us to find out what needs to be paid before the lien can be released, because they're going to sell their property and you're going to get your money that is owed on the case or on the arrears. And so, we work with the title companies to get those processed. We can suspend someone's driver's license. People say, well, why do you suspend someone's driver's license? Because they're not paying child support. Because it's a privilege to have a driver's license. That's a privilege to be able to get in a car and drive. So, people will say, well, you suspended my driver's license. Now I can't go to work. Well, if you were working, why didn't you tell us the name of your employer so that we can send a withholding and your license wouldn't be suspended? I would always catch people because they would say, well, now I can't drive to work. Or if I'm driving, I got to drive illegal because my license is suspended. I'm like, oh, so you're working. You need to provide us the name of your employer, and then we can get your driver's license reinstated. We will reinstate driver's license with the name of an employer that we can verify. So if we suspend someone's driver's license for non-payment of child support, if they provide the name of their employer, or if they give us the name of their bank account or something of that nature, we will lift that suspension. Financial institution data match, that's where, of course, if they have a bank account, that information is reported as well. And if they show up on that financial institution data match, we will notify that institution that we need them to withhold so much of that money based off the arrears. I already talked lottery, gambling, prize award, interceptions. We file that because it's all connected to the social security number of the person that's ordered to pay the support. Passport denial, a person will be blocked from being able to obtain or use a passport when they're in arrears of $5,000 or more. Insurance claim interception, if a person is due to receive a settlement from the insurance company, then we can intercept those. The QDROs, those are reports that we receive. So we may be notified of someone's estate, or we may be notified that someone's getting, a large amount of money on these reports, then we can intercept those as well. We also have our judicial contempt actions. That's where if someone is not paying child support, we can file a motion for contempt, and the courts will bring them into court to answer the contempt charge. And then typically they will give them a purge period. They would say, okay, you've been found in contempt. We're going to give you the next 180 days of you paying your child support on time and give you an opportunity to purge yourself. If you pay your support on time each and every month, then we will purge you, and then this contempt action would go away. And then we also have those cases that we have to file criminal non-support on. Non-payment of child support is a crime because it's a court order. So when someone does not pay their child support, then of course we can file that non-support against them, and they could actually face jail time. So the next slide. Okay.
Tanya fell asleep.
Tanya.
I'm here.
Okay. So the next slide is working with parents to remove barriers. So we have a couple of programs that we offer at our office. Sometimes people aren't able to pay their child support because they've lost their job, or because they have a felony, or just different reasons. And so we try to provide help. We have a couple of programs that we offer at our agency. We have our Family Support Matters program that is run by my coworker, Lisa Dolan. She actually will work with the families to try to figure out what the barrier is and how can we help them remove that. So a lot of her cases are people that have been convicted of felonies, and now they're having problems obtaining employment. And so we actually have a number of employers that we work with that will hire, our clients, and they get a referral from Lisa. They complete the Family Support Matters. And then, she finds out what their barriers are so that we can so that she can assist them. And then based off that, she matches them with an employer to try to become employed. We have our forgiveness of the state owed arrears. So anytime someone is ordered to pay child support, and that mom or that dad was receiving any type of like cash assistance, then that money is owed to the state. So a person can apply for the forgiveness program based off problems that they've had. It could be, they weren't able to work because they have health problems. And so this money is owed to the state. They can file this application to list their reason. If it's $4,999 or less, then it comes to CSEA, and our legal division decides if that all of it, some of it, or none of it is waived. If it's $5,000 and over, then it goes to the state and the state decides. So we do have that program. And then we have communication. Like I said from the very beginning, communication is the key on all of our cases. A lot of times it's the communication. We have several people that, especially during COVID, they've lost their job and they were waiting to get unemployment. Like calling and having us document that on their case, we can push it out, so that they're not being charged with a criminal non-support or contempt. And we can push it out so that they are not getting that extra 20% added to their monthly obligation, because we're aware they're looking for new employment or they lost their job because of COVID. So those cases where they're communicating with us, we're going to document those cases so that anytime someone pulls that case up, they can see the documentation from the previous worker, what was said, what they needed help with. Yes, we are an enforcement agency and we have to enforce these cases, but we realize life happens. I mean, nobody saw COVID coming. Nobody saw, COVID happening. And so because of that, a lot of people, lost their jobs and lost their way. And it's been hard coming back from that. But what we did decide as an agency is to suspend all enforcement actions. And we actually just started enforcement actions on all of our cases again. We just begun enforcing those cases here in the month of August. But up until August of this year, we were trying to make sure we weren't suspending people's driver's license, not filing contempts or criminal non-supports, because we understood COVID happened and it affected everyone. So, so that's that. We do have those programs in place. The next slide, we talked a little bit about that. License suspension, how can parents avoid a license suspension? Communication, that's going to be the main thing. How can parents have a license block lifted? On a lot of our cases, we require some form of payment. They've been really lenient on the amount of the payment. So if you have a person that's ordered to pay $200 a month and they're currently unemployed and they need their driver's license because they have employment lined up, but they can't start the job because their driver's license is suspended, with them just calling us and us being able to verify this employer is going to hire that person, we will reinstate their driver's license without any payment. If that's not the case and they're trying to get employment or they're at least looking for employment, then we will try to come up with an amount that they can pay so that that child can receive some type of support, maybe not the full monthly obligation, but we try to work with them to see what can they come up with to pay so that we can get their license reinstated and allow them the opportunity to try to find employment. The next slide. So the next slide is just calculating the child support. So there is a new model, our ORC section 3119. It now talks about income shares. Previously, excuse me, previously we did not have this income shares model. And so child support was just determined based off of the party's income, and it didn't give any credit for adjustments to income shares, support calculations. It did count cash medical and but there was a lot of adjustments that were not made. I mean, both parties' income and other information used to develop the support order. That's usually all we would use. And so ORC came out with this new section. And so now we have to take into consideration other responsibilities that the parties have. So there's 4 tiers, even with like parenting time. So parents file for court order visitation. So child may be with mom for so many days out the week, and then with dad so many days out the week. So we now have to give credit for that time that they are splitting. Previously, that was something that the courts had to address, but now administratively, we can now use the formula, this income shares model, and that will determine how much a person is ordered to pay. And in some cases, most cases, if there's a family that is shared parenting, then it will deviate from the guidelines. It means that it may not set a basic order, just kind of split down the middle. It may give more credit to the person that has the child more than the other. So they are now allowing us to do those cases now administratively. Okay, next one. So termination of support. Child support can be terminated. I'm just going to read this really quick. So if the child reaches the age of 18 and graduates from high school, then the order, the child support order that was set administratively will be terminated. So there's some items listed here that will tell you the reason why we would terminate support. Of course, graduation from high school and obtaining the age of majority or turning the age of 18, that will cause us to terminate a support order. I don't have my glasses on, but if the child passes away, we would terminate a support order. If an underage child gets married, we would terminate the support order. If there's an enlistment in the armed services as a child, I don't know how that's possible, but we will terminate the support order. Deportation. So if a child is from another country, the child was here and child gets deported, then we will terminate that support order. The child support order states that the child support shall not remain in effect after the child reaches 19 years of age, unless in a court child support order, the order provides that the duty of support continues. So we've had cases like this. What this means is some kids that even though they graduate high school and they turn 18, some parents, especially parents that were married, that obligor who's ordered to pay the support may be ordered to continue to pay support if that child has some kind of health issue that would require mom or dad to continue to provide care for that child. In some cases, courts will, if parents were married and divorced, they may order it as long as the child is attending college, up until a certain age that parent is ordered to pay support. So those are cases that are typically decided by domestic court or family court. And so we, of course, enforce those cases until, they tell us to terminate them. If a child is adopted, so if mom and dad had a baby, and then say mom gives the child up for adoption. If mom gives that child up for adoption, there's no support order for that child. But if mom keeps that child and dad wants to sign over his parental rights and mom's new husband wants to adopt that child support will stop. If there is an adoption that takes place, the child support order will stop. The obligor's death, if an obligor that is ordered to pay support, if he or she passes away, then that will cause the case to terminate. And then the grandparents to whom support is being paid, or a grandparent who is paying support, reports that the grandparent support order should terminate. So we do have some cases where grandparents are ordered to pay child support because they have they could have a minor son who had a baby, and the minor son's parents would be responsible for the child support in the event that the mother of the child was receiving benefits. So if both parents are minors and they have a baby, then if that minor mom's guardian, a parent, whoever she lives with, if they go and apply for assistance for that baby, which would be their grandchild, then then the parents to that minor dad is ordered to pay child support. So we do have cases like that. And then of course, in the event that he becomes of age, then that's no longer the responsibility of the grandparent. Once he turns 18 or graduate from high school and he's considered an adult, then that support will terminate.
I know the print is really hard to read on this,
Very small.
but it is Ohio Revised Code 3119.88. So if you want to capture that, just Google ORC 3119.88, and you can see I was trying to get into the comments. I kept changing the screen. I could not get it. So I wanted to put it into the comments for you. But again, it's 3119.88 for the ORC code. All right. We are a little bit past the time. We're about 10 minutes past the time. So I'm gonna flip to the next slide.
Okay. And this is just talking about our child support portal. All of the information that we can see on a case is available in the portal. So anyone that has a child support case can sign up for the portal. They can receive messages. They can see if there's been a payment made. They can, just about anything that we can do for them over the phone or coming into our office, they can look on their own cases and see that information for themselves. And then the next one just talks about, receiving the payments, and that a person can receive their child support payments directly into their bank account or through their SMI One card, which is like a debit card. And then it just tells you like the fastest, easiest way to make the support now, especially since COVID. There is a number of ways that a person can make their child support payments online, over the phone, whatever they're comfortable with. And then the next to last slide is just talking about how, so our office is still closed to the public. You could call our office and leave a voicemail message for a return call, and customer service returns those calls every day. And if someone would like to do a Zoom call or a Zoom hearing for their administrative child support case, they can request Zoom, and we will get that set up and send them a link. That's our website. And then finally, our last page is just my contact information and my email address. So I just kind of want to take this time to say thank you guys for listening to my very lengthy presentation. Hopefully nobody got too bored. And if you have any questions or anything, please feel free to contact me.
I have a question before we wrap up, and I know that we're over, so I'm sorry, everyone. But I just wanted to know, like, I know a lot of times we talk about like men paying child support. How often is that the other way around, where they're like mothers paying child support?
It used to be, it was probably like 70-30. It's more along the lines of like almost split. We have a lot of cases where moms pay support and dads have legal custody, or grandparents have legal custody. We're probably, if I had to guess, maybe about 42-45% of our cases are moms that are court ordered to pay child support.
We also broke those stats up by race. And I was shocked by some of the, you have presumptions and your implicit bias. I think it was, first of all, I was surprised to see how many moms owe child support. Again, that's one of my bias. And then I think it was majority white moms owe child support over Black moms. I think it was something like that, that still owe and haven't paid, or something like that. It was really interesting to me to see my implicit bias totally being played out when I saw these race numbers. And I should have actually shared them with you guys when we were going over that last time, because I found it to be very interesting.
Yeah.
Any other question? It looks like Tanya had a chat. Father signs voluntary acknowledgement and pays support. At some point down the line, DNA is performed and he found not to be biological parent. Will they be refunded paid support?
So that's a great question. If dad originally signed the birth certificate, he has to file a motion with the courts to even take a paternity test. Of course, he can go to the store and buy a paternity test and take it himself or pay for one, but it doesn't have to be recognized by the court. So if someone signs the acknowledgement and they now want to go and have DNA testing, they have to file a motion with the courts, and the courts will make the decision whether they're going to allow them to reestablish paternity for that child. at that time, if that paternity test comes back and he is excluded, it's completely up to the courts as to whether they will terminate that support due to the fact that he's not the father. Because remember, he signed the voluntary acknowledgement. So originally he said, I'm dad on his own. No one made him do that. So I've seen it a couple of different ways in all the years that I've been there. I've seen some that have continued. I've seen some that have been terminated. But as far as getting the money back, it's usually something that has to be filed civilly because we can't get involved. He originally signed the paper. He acknowledged that he was dad. We went as far as to set a support order. He didn't appeal that. And, you know, that's completely up to a court.
Another question. What if someone is not truthful about their employment or the employer has not reported their employment?
So typically, if somebody is working and they are working using their social security number, it's going to be reported to us in about 30 to 45 days of their employment. Now, if they are working under the table and they have an employer who's, you know, not reporting it, if they're not truthful, then we will have to start the enforcement process. We would have to, you know, if we'll send the employer wage assignment, if that employer doesn't respond and, you know, they never take out any payments, then we will then send a second notice. And then still, if we get no response, then we will send a compliance letter, letting them know that we could file contempt against them for not submitting those payments. And then if they come back and say, well, that person doesn't work here, you know, then at that time we will move forward with the default process and then license suspension and contempt. We then have to go forward with enforcement. We have people that lie all the time.
We have a few questions, so hang in there. What is the purpose of a child being emancipated? Is this to prevent additional child support fees from being withdrawn?
So I'm not sure if I understand that. So a child being emancipated before the age of 18?
It doesn't clarify in the question. Let me see who asked the question.
Yeah, actually, I asked that question.
Sorry, Marcus, yeah.
No, a situation of a person that was received emancipation papers, I guess, whatever, filings. They had just graduated from high school.
Okay.
And just wanted to know as far as like, is that something to protect more as far as the father not, you know, paying any more charges? I did notice in part of the presentation it said something about when a child turns 18 or something, they
Yes.
automatically, so.
Administratively, our administrative orders, when a child turns 18 or graduate from high school, whichever is the latest. So in some of our cases, we're going to have kids that don't emancipate till they're 19 because they're still in high school. Okay. But the termination process starts when graduation from high school and the age of 18, whichever is the later of the two. That's what that's, you know, it's just the laws with the child support. The ORC says that the administrative child support order terminates when that child is 18 or graduation from high school, whichever is the later.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Kathy, I think your question was answered about how do we go after people who don't pay, correct?
Yeah, it was. Thanks.
There's another one here. In terms of license suspension, does the person have to repay all arrears before the license is reinstated? I think you answered that question. For some, it can be thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And I think Shelley answered that question saying, no, you don't have to pay all
Right.
of them.
We usually try to set up a payment agreement with them.
And then Tasha wrote, I recently read that the obligation has to be satisfied. I wonder, is there a concessions? I don't know what that was in regards to. Tasha, are you still on?
I am. I actually had this conversation with a friend of mine. I guess they're going through this kind of thing. And we were looking on the BMV website and it said that it had to be paid, but Shelley did answer it because I was just wondering the same thing. If there were thousands of dollars, are there some kind of concessions to have a person drive, even though they still owe, thousands of dollars?
Yeah.
So I think it's just that.
So typically when their license are suspended, they're suspended because several months have gone by without making payments for whatever reason. And if someone communicates, well, I lost my job, I'm looking for employment, with notating those cases, we're not suspending their driver's license. But if someone's driver's license does get suspended and they call and they say, well, I'm looking for employment, what am I going to be required to do? Typically, they will try to get at least 1 monthly obligation. So if their support order is $200, they're going to ask, can you pay $200 to get these licenses reinstated? If they say no, then at that time, then they will go to one of our directors, probably enforcement director, and just try to work out something. Okay, he can or she can only pay this amount. But then the next question is going to be, well, can they make another payment within the next 30 days or within the next 45 days? They try to work with people to get that, to give them their driver's license, give them an opportunity to, get the driver's license reinstated and become gainfully employed. But if they owe a lot of money, typically it's usually whatever their monthly obligation is, they will ask for that. And then if they can't get that, they'll kind of scale back and try to get something. Because the thing is, the benefit is to try to get something so that whoever is ordered to receive that support is receiving some form of a payment.
Kathy asked a good question and Kathy, it's funny, I asked this question when I first started too. For people who are homeless or really not able to function, do you make referrals for them?
Yes, all the time. So our Family Support Matters program, Lisa Dolan is over that. I work very closely with Lisa Dolan. If we have someone that is homeless and they contact us and say, they have to contact us because we wouldn't know if they don't make contact with us and say, I'm currently homeless, I lost my job, whatever the case may be, we will notate that account and then we will make some referrals to try to get them some help. We do whatever we can, but Lisa Dolan, she is in our community. So she works closely with different agencies that can help people. I see Russ Schaefer is on here. He's one of the guys that we work with at the VA. We work very closely with Russ in terms of clients that have been in the military, that are veterans that have become homeless or they're not able to pay their support. So Russ is always in contact with us, trying to get us, working with them to see what we can do, how can we help them while they're trying to get themselves together. So if they call us and we can notate that account that they're going through hard times and we can have this information documented, we try to work with them or refer them to a program that can help them.
I just wanted to join in there. This is Russ Schaefer, and I work for the Department of Veterans Affairs. And I work with veterans that have child support issues all over the country and out of state. I've called Germany already. So interstate cases. So I hear this just about everything, and I have nothing but positive things to say about Summit County. Lisa and Shelley and Deborah and Jennifer. I mean, I've been working with them for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And let me just tell it real short, and I know we keep extending this shortness of this.
I know, I'm sorry, guys. I hope you're okay with it.
But when Shelley was talking about the DNA and pick up around the Summit County, Shelley actually came to my office 15 years ago or so, somewhere around there. I had a veteran that was really stressed out about the mom would give him, he had 4 kids, but she'd hold one of the kids back. And he always said, I don't know if he's really mine or why is she doing that? So Shelley volunteered to come down, do a DNA test in my office. And then the other thing is, I guess the one child was in prison or something. So he was a captive. So she did the DNA test there. So within like 2 weeks, it took off tremendous amount of stress off that veteran. He was paying his child support, but he didn't know if it was his child or not. And it came back that it was his child. And he was just so relieved, stress-free at that time. But that was the only way he would have gotten that information. if it wasn't for Shelley's outreach and the other ones at Summit County. So I can't say anything but good things out there. So thank you, Lisa and Shelley and Deborah Watkins and Jennifer Toltz.
Thank
And
you,
I'll
Russ,
get
for
off
all the
my
great work,
podium here.
all the great work that you do too.
Well, I
Oh,
see
happy
about
Thanksgiving, Tanya.
I see about 90% of the veterans that have child support here at the VA. Yeah, they come in and out. So we've tried to get to terms and see what the best things we can do. Thank you.
We appreciate that. We have one more question from Shelley. She had asked if the numbers on what is owed has gone up because of COVID.
I'm not really for sure. When we were doing the PowerPoint, we did ask Anthony Boston. He is our numbers guy, and when he sent me over the information, that was the information that he provided for me. I know that we have been able to collect money because people were getting unemployment, and that was huge because people were getting employment. I know a lot of people were like, oh, they were just given unemployment, but some of the people that we were getting unemployment from, they maybe hadn't worked in a couple of months, and I don't know how, or how they were able to get the unemployment or what they did or whatever, but some families were able to benefit off of receiving payments after not receiving payments at all. Even some people that were like self-employed, and they were able to sign up and get some help, and it helped a lot of our families. I'm curious to know how our collections look since COVID. I know a lot of people did lose employment, but there was quite a few that did receive unemployment.
Do you remember? I have the numbers from 2021. Do you remember around about what they were in 2019 or no?
I don't.
Okay.
So
If we have time in the next, I pulled up my graphs from the race. I don't know if you guys want to look at just the two. I'm kind of a dork, and I don't know if you want to be dorky too, but I have a couple graphs that show the race and the ethnicity of individuals who owe, what their children are, and there's 3 of them. I'm just gonna share the screen real quick. Sorry, I'm just gonna do it because I think these are the numbers for. Can you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, these are the numbers for 2021, and I just kind of did a quick question. Children who are under child support orders are mostly Black or white, and I was kind of testing our implicit bias here. I hope you guys can see that because I'm not putting it in full screen, but so 46% are white, and then 41%, and this was as of, Anthony gave me the stats as of 2021, are Black. Now remember, we've gone through the stats before, and we've said, okay, well, there's more whites than Blacks in Summit County anyway, so we would expect this to be higher. How much higher? I don't know the math on that. But then, we kind of pulled out some other ethnicities here just to show you a roundabout idea. People who don't fit in a box kind of take the rest of the pie there. Okay, so then, what about absent fathers? And I don't know that I like the word absent fathers, but fathers, who have not paid yet. What do you think, Black or white? I know, we have the stereotypes, but again, you're going to see more white fathers who have not paid than you do Black fathers, and again, more percentage of the unknown. I'm going to do it really quick because I know you guys got to go. Absent mothers, this is the one I was talking to you guys about. What do you think? That the ones who aren't paying, are they Black or white? Well, we're outstandingly at 63% of mothers who are white are not paying their child support. And this number is more than the fathers. So which I found this so interesting. I'm going to stop sharing because I know it's late, you guys. But
and Tanya, let me just say one thing: absent doesn't mean absent out of the child's life. It means
that's
absent
right.
out of the household. So I always try to look at it like that. Like, okay, not absent from the child's life. It just means absent out of the actual household where the child lives. So then I can kind of process it a little bit better.
I
Yeah.
think we have to use a better verbiage for it, because that's
Yes.
not fair to say. I think it's somebody who owes the money, you know. go
And a
ahead,
lot of
Karen.
times now we're saying non-custodial parent and
That's
then
right.
custodial parent.
That's a
So
good
a
idea.
lot of times when we refer, we can't change the way it's set up on our set system, but we can refer to the obligor as a non-custodial parent and then the person who the child lives with as a custodial parent.
And those moms who aren't paying, since it's up, you wonder if that's from the pandemic, all these jobs that people have lost. And, you know, childcare, and you just wonder if that's part of the, you know, what are the systemic issues?
That's a great question, Kathy. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask
Great
him.
study.
It is. Shelley, if I don't remember, like, let's get an email to him and ask him what the numbers were for 2019. And let's
Okay.
make that comparison just to get an idea. That is a very excellent point, Kathy.
Okay.
All right. All right. I know it's late, you guys. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much for staying late. Shelley, thank you so much for giving us all that info. I appreciate you guys. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'm thankful that you're all here, and I hope you enjoy your time with your families.
Thanks.
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
You take care.
Take care.